If you could give any advice to someone who has just moved to DC or is about to move to DC and plans on to date in DC, what's some advice that you would give them?
Don't.
Washington, D.C. For young people like myself who moved to the nation's capital, it can be a hard city to navigate, not geographically, but socially. It can be hard to explain, and it's one of those things where you get it if you live here. So many people who live in and around the district are very career-driven, and a lot of times are driven by their ambition, whether that be in politics or for a cause they're passionate about. And I'm the same way. Which is why I can tell you that building relationships in this city is hard. Really hard. Platonic or romantic. My name's Pete Sippis, I'm 25, and I've been living in the DC area for a little over 2 years now. And today we're going to explore why finding love in DC is so rigorous, and why young people think the dating scene here, well, sucks. I want to talk to a few friends who also live in DC and know the dating scene here.
My name's Danielle. I've been living in DC for just over 2 years now.
My name's Jack. I've lived in DC since August of 2020, so 3.5, almost 4 years.
Hello, I am Sabrina Zarifi. I am 27 and I've been in DC for 3 years.
I'm Christina and I moved here for work in May 2023.
Out of the 4 people I spoke with, Jack is the only one who is currently in a relationship and found love in DC.
We had a class together, and I don't remember exactly how it started, but one of us messaged the other. We were on like a group project together, and we met up to like do work together, and then just started hanging out a bit. And then after a little while of hanging out, one thing led to the next, and we just started dating.
The other friends I talked to haven't been so lucky.
I had a guy who was a consultant and he didn't text me back for like a week or something. And then he consulted with like the DOD and he was like, sorry, I couldn't, like the Israel-Hamas conflict like got in the, like what happened, you know, this was like in October. He's like, so like I was really busy. I was like, they didn't call a 25-year-old to like solve the Middle East crisis. Like you could have texted me back. I don't understand. So it's like they think that they just are hot shit because they're in the universe or in the orbit of, you know, DC. So they feel like they're more important than they are, and it's really annoying.
I really wanted to get to the bottom of why DC is such a notoriously bad city to date in. There are plenty of different theories people have posted on social media or written online. One theory I see quite often, and one that I thought was accurate, was the geography of the DMV area. People in DC don't want to date someone on the Virginia side of the river or commute to Maryland to see their partner, and even getting around DC itself can take a while if you have to transfer metro lines. Another theory about why dating in DC can be so rough is sometimes just the type of people. Like I said at the beginning, it's a very career-driven city, and one theory that I personally believe is people are always kind of looking for the next best thing, almost like, you know, when you work in a job and you think you're going to get a promotion after a certain year. There's always a sort of looking ahead, and, you know, for a city that has a lot of transplants, this idea that, you know, you're going to place roots in DC and find love and start a family isn't really that common among young people. But to get to the bottom of why DC is so bad, I wanted to just ask straight up about why they think dating in the city is so terrible. DC is notorious for being the loneliest city in America, it's sometimes called. We've heard stories from our friends, coworkers, colleagues, just about anyone about, you know, dating horror stories, DC just being a notoriously bad place to try to find love. In one word, how would you describe the DC dating scene?
Networking.
My one word, Is it bad to say horrible?
If you could describe the DC dating scene in one word, what would it be?
Like isolating weirdly. Like it's just like people move on. You just feel disposable, I think, in DC. So maybe disposable is a better word for it. I think that's maybe what it is.
Do you think that has to do with the fact that a lot of people kind of move in from completely different cities and then usually move out after only like a couple of years?
That might be part of it. Maybe it's also just like the type of person, people are really busy here. So they're kind of looking for someone who can fill in the time that they have, which is not a lot. So I do think it's a combination of those two, for sure.
Like the running comment about it, I guess, is that like DC's so transient that everyone's only here for 2 years, but like no one, I don't know. I feel like people don't take that to the next step of like, why are people only in DC for 2 years? And it's either grad school or like short-term work placements, right? And so take the transient nature of that with the fact that everyone's from somewhere else. Well, I don't really have anything to talk to you about besides where I'm from. And what I'm doing here, which is going to be either work or grad school. And so, God, I went on so many dates where you would do the like, where are you from? What brought you here? What are you currently doing? This was so fun. Let's do it again soon. And like, it's that just, I think the dating, it's just such an easy thing to kind of talk about because like who doesn't have some form of work or school or story for how they ended up in DC? But yeah, it always feels like networking. It always feels like networking.
I think for my age range, a lot of people are just focused on their career, not looking for something serious. And as a woman with my age, I need to be serious because we have a window for having children. And then there's just like a lot of the hookup culture. So like a lot of that is expected. And so it's not like something I'm, I guess, like interested in.
Do you have any good dating horror stories in your time in DC?
There was the Israel-Hamas guy who had I guess they called upon him to help, I suppose. There was a guy who texted me for like weeks leading up to our date, and then we went on the date. He talked for like 4 hours straight, and I was like, I can look past this. Beggars can't be choosers. He texted me while he was in line for the bathroom in the middle of our date. He texted me after he left in his Uber and was like, would love to see you again. And I was like, all right, well, there's some prospects. I got home at like midnight. I woke up the next morning at like 8:30 a.m. to a text that said, I've thought this through and I'm too much of a knucklehead for you. My friends and I were too crazy, too much of a, I really wish I could read out the text, I don't know where it is. But it was like, he said, quote unquote, knucklehead, which is an insane verbiage. Like who beyond like the night, who uses that? And so I had to be like, who are you to decide if you're too much of a knucklehead for me? Like, what the hell is that?
I'm from Philadelphia, and I'll see a lot of people in, Phillies hats or they're like Penn State, whatever. But yeah, I mean, like, I remember I went on a date with someone who was also from like the Philly area, but like the Jersey side. And so, Philly, Jersey, it's not always the match made in heaven. So you do the 5 minutes of the like, oh shit, like is Central Jersey a thing? Ooh. And then it's like, oh great, so you work for McKinsey. Like, that's so cool. Yeah, like I think that can really only get you so far half the time.
There's a lot of first dates. And I think from my background and the way that I was raised, I'm used to chivalry and men paying on the first date and traditional dating styles. And nowadays, those guys aren't that way.
A lot of split first dates.
A lot, unfortunately. Yeah, I am thankful that I've never had to pay for the guy. But yeah, a lot of split first dates. And then like when the guy is like trying to pay, or not like wanting to pay, but like puts his card down because he feels obligated, that just like makes me feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, no, like let's just split it. And then they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, okay, you didn't care. Like you're asking me out. Like I feel like you should take me out. I'm not asking you out. I would never ask a guy out.
After talking to my friends about their dating experiences and hearing their thoughts as to why dating in DC can be a struggle, I wanted to see if there was a solution to be found for whatever the underlying problem of DC dating may be. If you could give any advice to someone who has just moved to DC or is about to move to DC and plans on to date in DC, what's some advice that you would give them?
Don't. No, that's being a little facetious. I like set your bar really low, I think. I think that, I don't know, I feel like I see so many of the DC horror stories as just people having like the same standard that they would for any other city. And DC's just such a weird place. Like, and not in a good or bad way. It works for some people better than it does others, but like, set your bar low. It's gonna be either weird and bad and you get a story out of it, or it's gonna be completely fine. Like, the lower the standard, the less disappointed you're gonna be.
What advice would you give them before they enter the DC dating scene?
Oh my. I think DC is a great city. I think there's a lot of social activities. But for the dating scene specifically, it's not good. So I would say go into it not being serious and just looking to meet new people and have fun. And I think that's when they will get the most out of things.
See, I haven't had a success story, so I don't feel I am the best at giving advice. I would say and maybe this is the problem, but to, try to focus on yourself, and you're here because of your career, probably, if you're a transplant. And don't worry too much about dating, I guess. Like, if you put all of your energy into it, you might just come up empty. At least that's been my experience. I don't know if that's very good advice at all. But that's the advice my mom gives me, so there's that as well.
Well, you say focus on yourself, and you said, I don't know if that's the best advice, but I mean, it could be. I'm trying, like where do you kind of get that sense of, on one hand, it's good to focus on yourself, but on the other hand, you might not be able to focus on finding that relationship?
Yeah, it's a weird balance to strike, and one that's, I think when you're dating, you're always trying to find. And I say it may not be the best advice because like I said earlier, like a lot of people come to DC to like work and to be this person, and maybe that's part of the larger problem of dating in DC. And so maybe you'd just be perpetuating that if you sort of didn't really focus on dating. But yeah, I mean, maybe and also just not taking things too personally when things don't go right, because again, there's so many factors that go into it. For example, a conflict in the Middle East. You truly never know.
Well, I'd say if they're thinking about moving to DC, that if there's a professional driver to that, to tailor the city you pick on, professional and personal, and then once somebody's already in DC, right, once they already have that attraction, is truly, you'll either, maybe there's a small chance you meet your person, and if not, you've got a really funny story to tell your friends. So you just gotta be genuine and take it with humor, and it's nothing to do with you if something doesn't work out with someone, but it will be a funny debrief call with your friends after.
If I could close this podcast with one message, it would be this. Whether you just moved to DC or have actually planted roots here, Whether you're looking for love on dating apps or looking to meet someone special at a bar or even on a Volo team, don't be down on yourself if you're struggling to date in the DMV. Dating in any city is hard enough, and the social nature of DC makes it even harder. If you think you're the only one struggling to find love here, trust me, you're not the only one. Sometimes the right person comes along when you least expect it.